Hey, Jim Roman here, and welcome to another episode of the Jim Roman Show, where we talk about how to build a better business to build a better life. We have a special treat for you this month where we're doing Coffee with a Coach. That's where we drink coffee and answer your coaching questions. And we have a special guest today, as we've had every single week this month, and is Jennifer Perrow with JRP Leadership. Jennifer, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I'm happy to be here.
We're so happy to have here today. Today, we're going to be talking about people and processes, how those go together for performance. Before we jump into that, if this is your first time in our show, typically we talk for 20 to 25 minutes on a topic or training. And at any point you have questions or clarification, please put comments in the chat box below. If you would want any of the resources that we talk about, put your email below as well. We are so glad you're here. This is just a service we like to be able to do to give back, be able to help people, again, build a better business to build a better life. So let's jump into it. So Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, since we're talking about people and performance, how important are processes? I'm thinking, McDonald's has process, Chick-fil-A has processes. How and why are processes important, or are they? I'm just curious.
Processes are definitely important, and whether or not you've named it, you have one. Any series of steps that you take is a process, and the difference between exceptional businesses and businesses that are surviving is the time and attention they pay to intentionally building their processes in a way that will deliver the right results for their clients consistently, and also empower their employees to know exactly what to do and how to go about doing their job.
Awesome. Now, you teach leadership, and how does leadership play into processes, or how do processes play into leadership?
Okay, good question. There's a difference between leadership and management. We've talked about that before. Management is, doing the minute details. By defining your processes clearly and making sure that your employees or your team members are well versed on the processes, it enables the leader to actually lead, to focus their time more on improving the business and developing their people so that the company can continue to grow and improve and flourish.
Do you find, how often do you find that companies don't have processes, and that tends to have challenges and they don't see the cause and effect of that?
All the time. There's a natural progression or maturation process with a business, just like there is with a human being. When you first start, you're doing whatever you can to make it work, much like a toddler learning to walk. They try this, that didn't work, they'll try that. That didn't work, they tried that. Oh, look, holding onto the coffee table, I can stand up. It's that type of, that is actually a process. I'll use that word a lot. With a business, kind of the same way, you're developing your processes unintentionally. And as you start bringing on employees, it's very easy to just verbally share processes. And if anybody's ever played the child game telephone, where one person says something and you repeat it down the chain, by the time it gets to the last person, it's completely different. That happens within the business setting as well. And so as you grow and you figure out what steps make the most sense for your business and for your clients, if you can document those, then you start to ensure that your clients are getting consistent results. And you have less problems because there's a system and everybody knows what that system is. And if you have less problems, you're able to help more people. And so that's where the processes come into play. The bigger the company gets, the more people who are involved in a company, the more critical documenting your processes are.
So it's interesting. I just had a thought, and I'm thinking this is one of our listeners right now are thinking this, or watching this recording after it's live. What are some types of processes that are talking about? I'm thinking here, you and I know processes, we put processes in our businesses every day, but I'm thinking, if I'm listening and new in business, or what do we mean by processes? Because again, that just things are going through my mind, and I just don't want to assume that everyone thinks the same way that we do. Would you give some examples of process, I guess?
Sure. Any series of steps to accomplish an outcome or to achieve an outcome is a process. Within your business, you want to start with a good overview of what is your business. You get clients, you're the five functions of business. Each of those has processes involved. You have to get your clients. You have to do the work for the clients. You need to hire and develop and support your employees. You have finance and administrative duties that have to get done for every business, invoicing, paying bills, those little fun things. And then you want to intentionally have a process to create raving fans, because that's where your growth really comes from. So at the very core, each of those foundations of your business is a high level process. And then you can chunk down into the details. For example, marketing is a process of attracting leads. Sales converts them to clients. But how do you market? You could have 3 or 4 processes. You might have a process for how you market to prospects online, how you market to prospects through networking. So each of those efforts that you make, there is a process involved with it.
And like you said, it's either written down or not written down. There's a process, and the process may be one of, I love the one you use as an example. I never thought of marketing. Well, I get marketing as a process. There's marketing, but then putting a process to the marketing to increase its effectiveness, right?
Exactly.
And if I'm doing it myself, that's one way of going about it. But if I want to delegate that or get that off my plate, I need to take what's in my head and be able to convey that to someone else. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, definitely. Whether it's conveying it to another team member, or what we're seeing more and more thanks to technology is automating. A lot of a marketing process can be automated, but you have to know what that process is. What experience do you want your prospects to have as they start to get to know you? And how do you capture the information so that when they are ready to engage in a sales conversation, you have what you need to be able to serve them?
Awesome. I know I've asked this question to you before, but what's the importance of a process for most business owners? I know you mentioned a couple of moments ago, but I'm wondering if I guess I'm listening from, okay, I'm thinking about processes, and I'm watching Jim's, Jim Roman's show, and we're talking about processes, and I'm like, what's the importance of it? Obviously, I'm putting process in place, whether it's written or not, whether I know it or not. But what are some of the importance, or maybe some of the benefits? I think that's the question, the benefits of putting processes in place. And my next question would be, what processes you put in first? But not to get ahead, what are some of the benefits of putting in process that people may not think about?
Sure. So some of the benefits are that when you have a process written down, one, it gets everybody on the same page so that there is synchronicity across the organization. The left hand knows what the right hand's doing. Another benefit is that if there's a process and an employee or team member is following the process, when there is a disruption in the process, they have something to go back to figure out, to be able to more quickly get back to the process versus flailing in the ether, trying to figure out, what do I do, right? It's a grounding tool for your team members as situations arise. Another value or benefit of a process is that it makes it so that it's easier to identify bottlenecks in your systems. And bottlenecks, that's a part of business. You build something, there's going to be, as the business grows, bottlenecks naturally occur. And the most successful businesses are the ones that can quickly identify where the bottlenecks are so that they can then fix them. And how do you fix them? You improve the process.
I love that. I remember I was working with my team members and we had an onboarding process, right? A lot of companies don't have onboarding of new clients, which I think it's an invaluable process. And so we had a folder, it had a checklist in it. And the process was at the time is we brought on a new client, my client care coordinator would get it all set up. And then I thought it was to hand it over to me. And then once they handed it over to me, it would trigger me to call them to confirm their appointment, saying I'm looking forward to our coaching call, et cetera. Well, this client calls me and says, hey, when's my coaching call? And I'm thinking, well, it's Monday, just like we had it scheduled. Well, no, I haven't heard from anybody. Now, at first, he was being a little adversarial, and I'm thinking, well, you know it's Monday, you know it's at 6 o'clock because I booked it.
Right.
But I understand you didn't get a reminder, and that's a different story. And so I told him, no problem, Monday, 6 o'clock, hung up the phone, went over to my client care coordinator and said, you know, where's the folder? And she goes, oh, it's right here on my desk. And I'm like, well, why haven't you handed it to me? I didn't know I was supposed to. And before I said a word, I went, well, okay, I'll take the folder. I opened it up. I looked at the process, it was a checklist, and it did not say hand over the folder to Jim to confirm his appointment. And I was like, oh my God.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then what are some of the most important processes that one should put in place?
Sure. So there are two different ways I'm going to answer this because I love that you mentioned a checklist. So the first I'm going to talk about is a process map. A process map is a visual representation of the higher level steps in a process. Kind of a flow chart.
Something like this?
Yes, exactly like that. And so I think that there are 5 that are critical for any business to have. The first is that core business map that you see at the top. We've talked about it. You generate a lead, you convert a lead to a client, you deliver the product or service, and then you want to nurture the client relationship. And you'll see there are 2 things that come off of that. By nurturing the client relationship, you're going to be able to deliver more products and services to them. But you'll also see by nurturing the client relationship, it leads back to generating leads. That's because if you deliver your products or services correctly and you intentionally nurture your client relationships, you will get raving fans who automatically naturally bring you new prospects. So understanding that overview of the business, it's a great way to onboard your employees so they understand where they fit in the whole thing and they understand the value of each section of the business in the bigger picture. I think your sales process should be mapped out. The client nurture process should be mapped out. Also, whatever service or product that you're delivering, how you deliver it should be mapped out, because that's where anything that's client facing should definitely be mapped out. Probably the easiest way to say that. The other piece that I think is important is the invoicing and accounts receivable process. There's often in businesses a disconnect between when do I deliver the service, when do I do the invoicing, and how do I collect the money? And if you don't have that mapped out, you're going to either forget to invoice people, you're going to forget to collect the money. And so if you don't have that process written out, it's very easy to have gaps that can really be detrimental to your business.
Yeah, it reminds me of the book E-Myth over my shoulder here. And Michael Gerber's quote is saying, you want to have a customer experience that the first customer has the exact same experience as the 1,000 customer. And I really think Chick-fil-A, of all the restaurant services that are out there, really delivers on this, is that you're going to get the same experience no matter what Chick-fil-A you go out throughout the country. Is huge.
Yes, I agree. It's you're building trust. People do business with people buy from people and businesses that they know, like, and trust. And one of the best ways to build trust is to be consistent. And having your processes and enforcing them with all of your team members ensures that consistency.
So we understand the benefits of that. To include, we didn't mention, is that by creating processes to include checklists, you're able to delegate more in hopes to getting the work done at the level that you would want. A lot of owners say to me, well, Jim, I can't trust anybody to do it the right way. And I never think about, I've never done this. And it's funny, you and I have this conversation. I should say, well, do you have a process for that? Do you have a checklist for that? I've never said that. I got to get a t-shirt that says, you have a process for that? Any thoughts on that? Again, that never thought to say that before, because I'm like control freak. I mean, let's talk about how you can go about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The most dominant personality trait, interesting that shows that word, the most prevalent personality trait of entrepreneurs is that high dominance, the charge, go, get it done. One of the kind of offsets of that is that there's less attention to detail. And when there's less attention to detail, they know that they can get it done, right? But if they can't tell you how they got it done or how they get it done every time, then yeah, in their mind, how can I trust anybody else to figure it out? And so it's learning how to embracing the concept of, let me document how I figured it out. And then I can have other people do the things, the whole concept of most people get into business because they're really good at doing something. And then all of a sudden they realize, wait, this is a business and I need to be able to not just be really good at doing the something, I need to be really good at running a business. And at some point you can't do it all. And so by having documenting the processes, defining the processes, you are able to trustfully share the workload so that the owner then can get to what makes them special as an owner, and they can rely on their people. The checklist that we talked about is a great way to do that. Any process that has multiple steps, any process that has high risk associated with it, or any process that delivers a key result should have a checklist.
Something like this?
Like that, yes. So if you are a service provider and you have field engineers, field techs, cleaning professionals who go on site to perform the work, that's the ultimate in needing to trust one of your employees, because not only are they doing the work, they're doing it in your client's home or in their, they're right there. And so having a checklist ensures that they follow the same steps every time. If you think about when you go on site, you want to introduce yourself, tell them what you're doing and do the work, and then make sure they're happy with it and go home.
Right.
But the more you do that, the more the easier it is to forget some of the pleasantries, because you're doing the same thing over and over again. And so in your mind, in the service professional's mind, I know what I've got to do. I'm going to go in, I'm going to say hi, I'm going to go do the work, I'm going to come up and say, hey, I did the work. Can you sign off on this? Great. Have a nice day. And I think I've done a great job. But the client is going, wait, what just happened? Or I had wanted to ask them about such and such, while they were here, but they were gone before I could even do that. And so if you have this checklist that they have to check off, did you introduce yourself? Did you explain what you're going to be doing? Did you ask if they had any other issues or questions? If you have those checklists in place, it can be paper, but these days paper is kind of antiquated. You give your techs an iPad or a smartphone, and there's software you can put these checklists in electronic form, and they can just click a button as they do it. And then the best part about that is then that creates a repository or a database of these checklists that the owner or this leader or the manager can look and see what are they doing. So if they find that, it's a great way to see, I have a client that, or I have this service tech, and it seems like all the clients that this service tech meets are just raving. And then I have this other service tech and their clients just never seem super happy when they go out. Well, the first thing I would do is go look and see, are they doing the checklist? And if not,
you've probably heard this before. Again, working with a lot of service-based industries, it's like, I mean, you make a great point. You have two contractors or two service people, and one has reviews and one does not. And a lot of times you say, I don't know why. And you make a great point. If you have a process map or a checklist in this case, you can see where they're failing. When you and I were talking about this session, I was sharing with you the contractors that come to my house, right? I had a pest control company. I had one guy come and a second person come, two different people, same company. And I had one experience was memorable and one, I don't even know the guy's name. And I think one followed a process consistently and another one was just doing the job, and it showed.
Exactly. And you feel it, right? And it stuck with you. And that's what, as the business owner, the benefits of using checklists and process maps and is that you have greater influence or impact on what memory your clients take away with them, even though you're not the one in their house.
So we talked about the benefits of doing a processes and or checklists is one, creating that experience that people will rave about you, give you those reviews. Writing a process, a checklist gives you opportunity to get things off your plate, get it onto other people's plate, and be able to do it at a level that you're probably pleased with. We talked about, the process map versus the checklist. I guess the question I would have now is, where do I start? And are there solutions out there, softwares out there that I could use to help me going? Because I'm thinking, I don't even know where to begin. What would you recommend if I'm watching this episode and I'm thinking, okay, I get the benefits of processes and I need to write them. Where would you begin, and what are some of the resources that are available for people to be able to follow through on this?
Sure. The first thing I would do is those top 5 process maps. They give you a visual tool that if you're a solopreneur, that's a great thing. But when you have the bigger your team, the easier it is to get others to help you. Yep. If you have that process map, because you have something visual you can work around. If you look at, say, the finance and accounting, this one's a pretty straightforward, but you could say, looking at this, where are we failing? Do we seem to never hit our forecast? Well, if we're never hitting our forecast, let's look at what we're doing when we analyze what we're doing. And what's that process? Let's look at how we forecast. If we seem to never know where our money is, maybe we're not generating reports in a timely manner, or maybe we're not generating the right reports. And so it gives you something, like kind of a visual to jump off from, to figure those out. The sales process, this one is a very high level. You have multiple lead sources. You have to capture the lead information. You want to understand the lead's needs, share a right product or service, secure the agreement, and then transition the client relationship. If you have someone who has a lot of leads but doesn't seem to be able to close the deal, then okay, there's something in this conversion process. So let's go into greater detail. What type of conversations are you having? What information are you sharing? When are you sharing the information? And you can create the right process that matches the product or service that you're selling and your ideal prospect whom you're selling to.
We talked about that in the beginning. You mentioned the 5 functions that we help people, the many hats of business is another way of saying that, where you have bringing in business activities and, processes around that, hiring and training, which we talked about last week with Kate Congdon by Mark by Excellence. You need to have a process before you hire someone, during the hiring process, and after. Getting the work done, admin, finance, like you're talking about, then eventually creating raving fans should be a process to keep that machine going. So that is so important. So where would I begin other than that, or what other resources are available out there for people?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, there are people out there very detailed. They think you gotta go, nitty gritty down to every little step. And then there's the other people who just like on a piece of paper going, here's the 5 steps. Good luck.
Right.
Any guidance and direction on that?
Yes. So I think once you get your core 5 process maps, then you can say, okay, where am I having the most struggles? And start there. I'm a big proponent and start where you are, right? And then it will just naturally evolve, because as you clear up one challenge, another challenge will present itself. And if you start to incorporate this process of looking at the process, developing the checklists, then as you go, it will help you solve the problems faster, and it will create your documentation. Checklists are great when you're having an issue. One of the best things to do is just have everybody in your firm write down what they do. Just a quick checklist of these are the things I do, right? That's a document. You want to start getting technology involved when you're ready to start utilizing the documents as tools. There are 2 different systems that I've used successfully. The most basic is that I've used is called Manifestly. Yeah, manifest.ly. Like
Lee being LY, manifest.ly.
Yes. Exactly. They are a checklist company, and it's awesome. You can create your checklist or workflow, and you can have as many as you want for different roles. You can have a checklist that is just for one person, or if you have a process that multiple people have to touch, you create this one checklist, and it allows you to move the checklist through the steps with due dates and deadlines and who's assigned to what task. So it improves the communication and the flow. Not only is it great for that, but the other piece that I love for our business owners is that they can pull up at any point a real-time snapshot or summary view of all the checklists that are going on. And in one little screen, they can see, there are 10 clients going through this process, and I can see that they're at this stage, and this is the person involved in it. And then, oh, wait, here's a process that's past due. And then they can click in and see why it's past due. And so rather than having to ask their employees all the time, how's it going? Where are you in the process? What's happening? Which feels very much like micromanagement, and will demoralize and de-incent an employee to do their best job. This allows the owner to see without having to touch them, and then only goes when you can choose, am I going to approach to say, hey, I've noticed you're staying on top of your checklist, you're doing your processes really well, great job. But also can go, hey, I see that you're behind here. Is there something I can do to help you? Are you missing, is there some resource that you need? So it puts the manager into a leadership role.
Well, let me piggyback off that, because I want to read one of the questions that were asked of us today. Based on what you're saying, would you say processes can help take some of the negative emotion out of supervising employees?
100%. 100%. It's taking what's in your brain and putting it on paper, and then handing it to, now that if you go through that with your employee and answer any questions they have with it, that they've got the tools. And then you can be a coach. You have that point of reference, like you said, with your example where you said, well, why didn't you hand me the folder? Well, because it's not in the process. And so now you can add it. And instead of getting mad at the employee for not doing their job, you were able to take ownership personally and fix it. And you maintained a positive relationship with the employee.
Yeah, I don't know who quoted this, but someone said, you manage the process, not the person. Exactly. I was like, well, I never got that until we had the situation where the process was flawed. It was missing
Right.
steps. And if I would have tried to manage the person and, you did this, that would not have worked very well. But where I went, oh, let's look at the process together. And the interesting thing is, once I brought that to their attention, before we could update the process, the following client onboarding process, it was like on my desk, or like, what's this? It's like, well, it's our newest client. I'm like, so I get managing the process, not the person makes the biggest difference. And like you said, it takes the emotion out of the whole thing.
Yeah, there's some recent research, a recent study came out, and I wish I could remember who did it, but they are showing that providing criticism is not constructive. It actually demotivates your employees, because it doesn't matter how well-intentioned you are. I'm going to receive it as I've done something wrong, right? But if you can push it to focus on that process, then it's not about the person. I then become, as your employee, I become part of the solution to figure out the process rather than part of the problem.
Yeah. So as we finish up, a couple of questions. One, well, you said Manifestly was one of those resources. Is there another resource?
System Hub is another one at systemhub.com. That one is great. As your company's getting larger and you're ready to be a more holistic solution, you're able to define your processes, attach checklists, attach videos for training, just a much more comprehensive solution. So that's when you're really getting larger and need to move beyond the simple.
Now, have you used Process Street, which is process.st? Have you used Process Street at all?
I have not used it, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, I've messed around that. We were looking at Manifestly and Process Street. What I like about Process Street, they gave you a couple of examples to get you going. A couple of them are already archived. So if you need a hiring checklist, you can pull from that and add to that. And it's really like a workflow that I like. What I love about Manifestly is, like you said, you can see all the processes that are in order. For example, if you are in real estate and you're managing 10 closings or 10 listings, you can see where people are in the process just by looking at the dashboard. So I love that side of it as well.
Manifestly does have some of those some templates as well. I will say that. System Hub doesn't have the templates, but they have a lot of information on how to go about the process, how to go about using the system, which is really good. It's a pretty user-friendly.
Awesome. How can people, if they want to get a copy of the basic process map, where would you recommend they get there? How could they get their hands on that?
Sure. If you just drop wherever you're watching this, whether it's the live or the recording, in the comments below, just say, would love more information, and I will reach out and we can connect, and I can email you. I've got a checklist of your top 5 process maps and checklists that any business should have, and why. And then always feel free to reach out directly to me, Jennifer at jrpleadershipcoaching.com, or visit my website, jrpleadershipcoaching.com. Be happy to jump on the phone and talk to anybody about how to get started where you are.
Any last words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
I just think that I'm a process geek, and I know I've owned businesses. It's hard when you are leading the business to slow down enough to put a process in place, but it's like a slingshot moment. You step back for a brief moment, and if you do it right, it's going to slingshot your business forward faster than anything else will.
Awesome. Well, Jennifer, thanks you again so much for being on our special episode of Coffee with the Coach, where we drink coffee and answer your coaching questions.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.
And for those who are still with us today, next week we have a special guest, Jim Roman. We'll be interviewing Jim Roman on how to grow beyond capacity, organizing your business to also have a life. So join us next week. Please feel free to look at the previous episodes where we started off the month with Rare Leadership with Don Whitestone. Last week was with Kay Congdon, now Jennifer. And then we have special guest Jim Roman, interviewing Jim Roman next week. With that being said, we want to thank you for being part of our community. Again, our goal is to help you build a better business so you can build a better life. Again, I'm Jim Roman. The more you know, the more we grow.